Hello,
Welcome to Hat Guys Talk Books. I am J. Daniel Sawyer.
I am J.R. Murdoch. You can find out more about me at jrmurdoch.com. You can find out more about him at jdanielsawyer.net.
No, JD Sawyer.
JD Sawyer, I get it wrong every single time. And every time I say it, I'm like, that does not sound right. It's much shorter. One of these days I'll get it correct. One of these days. Promise.
Hey, we all need things to aspire to.
This is true. This is true. I aspire not to be a big dumb dumb. Speaking of big dumb dumb, ugh, meet Tarzan. You not.
Oh yes, well you've read more of Burroughs than I have, so you should take the helm on this one.
Did you know Tarzan, despite the TV shows and the movies, was not a moron?
Yep.
Tarzan in the
cunning
books.
Intellect.
Hey, that's right. I put it away. I had my Gru meets Tarzan. I put it away. I don't have it here right now. But one of the things that Mark Evanier talked about in that book, he loved watching the Tarzan TV show, but he enjoyed reading the books even more, realizing that Tarzan was a very intelligent character. Oh, yeah. And in the comic strip was a very intelligent character. And that's who they got to draw in the Gru meets Tarzan, was the person that took over the drawing of the Tarzan comic strip.
Nice.
But Tarzan is just scratching the surface of Edgar Rice Burroughs' plethora of work. But I think I really want to discuss two of what he did, just because they were, for me, the most fun. From reading them to I just burning through them like lightning. Tarzan, I discovered as a senior in high school in the late 80s. And we've talked about this before. I had dyslexia. Reading was always a challenge until I learned how to speed read. And that was around 7th grade. And by speed read, I mean, that was my speed reading. Mm-hmm. By the time I got to 12th grade, I was reading about a page a minute, and sometimes even faster. So when I say I burned through the Tarzan books, I mean, I burned my fingers speed reading through them, literally. My fingers would be smooth from reading so fast. So I had a lot of English classes as a senior in high school for various reasons, but I needed to make up a number of credits. So I took a bunch of reading courses because I was enjoying reading as a senior in high school. And Edgar Rice Burroughs was one of those authors where I went to the library and I'm like, look, oh, hey, Tarzan, hey, look, Barsoom, of Mars. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to read all of these. So I would just grab one, and I could read one of those books in probably between 1 to 2 hours. I would burn through a Tarzan book. And it wasn't what I had expected. Much like watching the Conan movie of the 1980s, you get glimmers of, hey, this character isn't just all muscle and stupid. But when it came to Tarzan, you watch some of the Tarzan, oh, meet Tarzan, you Jane. It wasn't like that. The books, he was incredibly intelligent. He knew where he came from. He could communicate with the animals in their language, which I thought was fascinating. It was a lot like Dr. Dolittle. He spoke to the animals, and the animals would do his bidding. And then you get further into the series and you realize, wait, he's not Tarzan, he's Lord Greystoke. And it's like,
yep. Maybe the best Tarzan film was Tarzan of Greystoke with Christopher Lambert.
Oh my gosh, where he goes back home.
Goes back to Scotland.
Yep. And he still has his jungle roots with him when he comes back, and he longs for that time. He doesn't like the pomp and circumstances. He likes the cut and dry. This is the way life is. But Tarzan out there protecting the animals from poachers, out there protecting the forest from people trying to cut down the forest and invade. So many different odd plots of that era. Tarzan could be the same thing today, out there doing his thing. And it was, he didn't swing on vines. He climbed trees, but he was raised by gorillas. So he he would climb trees. He didn't. I don't know why it bothers me so much. It shouldn't. But liberties were taken with his character in a lot of the different shows. I mean, he set traps. He would outsmart people. He wouldn't just always overpower. That wasn't his thing. He would use his intellect, which made Tarzan such a fun character. It's a lot like Doc Savage. Doc Savage doesn't always use brute force.
Rarely, in fact, does he use brute force.
Yes, he's the strongest, the smartest, the fastest of all his cadre, but he will leverage other people's skills before he leverages his own, and he will bring everybody together. His greatest power was getting the team to function. Tarzan's greatest power was using the animals to help him do something to outsmart somebody, because hey, look, here comes this little baby elephant. What's going on? Oh my gosh, I'm in a trap. It was so much fun reading things happen like that again and again. It didn't matter that it happened book after book. It was just fun reading all of those adventures. But beyond that, Disney came out with a movie several years ago that a lot of people saw and said, who the hell is John Carter?
Oh, and that it was a stunningly good film. I was expecting it to be a train wreck.
Why did they leave off on Mars? If they had
okay, so here's the story as far as I understand it. It was going to be called John Carter of Mars. And then
all the original advertising had that.
Yep. And then Bob Iger took over from Michael Eisner, I think it was. And he wanted to put his own stamp on it, and like a lot of people do, studio executives do, he wanted to kill the old projects. But John Carter of Mars had taken too much money, and it had to go, and so it had to go out. And he wanted to make sure that it did well, so it would look really good on his first year reports. So he's looking at it, and he's like, science fiction films just don't do well unless they're Star Wars. If we tell people this is of Mars, they'll think it's gonna be just schlock. So just call it John Carter. And that's why it was called just John Carter.
Interesting side note. John Carter, the actor in that movie, was the same actor that was in a flop the previous year called Battleship.
Really? I didn't see Battleship.
He was in both of those movies. For me, Battleship was everything I thought it was going to be. It was stupid fun. It was stupid sci-fi fun, exactly how I expected it. John Carter, I wish they would have left off Mars on there. Like you said, it stuck true to the literature.
Yeah. Basically the only thing they changed was they put clothes on the characters.
Yeah, because a lot of the female characters in John Carter were not clad.
None of in the Barzoom books, none of the humans wore clothing for modesty, only for ornamentation. So the men would wear battle decorations and weapons, and the women would wear jewels. But the climate was such that nobody wore clothing, and the culture was such that the culture was like what you'd find in a nudist camp, not what you'd find in a red light district. And
yeah, absolutely. Everyone was very modest, and just like you said, it was because of the weather. Why am I going to wear clothes? But when I read those as a teenager, oddly enough, because of the way it was written, as you said, it wasn't a sexualized thing. It wasn't a sexy thing. It was just the way things were. And the way Edgar Rice Burroughs presented it, this is the society. This is how things function. Let's get on to the action. Okay, let's go. I'm ready for it. A lot of other books of that era, of the pulp era, they went the other direction. Hey, look, everyone's naked with knives.
The pulp era was great for lurid, and lurid's hard to do. So no slagging him off for that, but Burroughs he was the first science fiction writer to take the cultural relativism that was being revealed by anthropologists seriously and say, so things really can be different, and human nature means that society will have ideas about modesty and they'll have ideas about propriety, but those ideas don't have to be anything like tied to the things that we think embody, the symbols that we think embody those ideas.
Yep. And he had his science down as well. That's what I also thought was interesting about John Carter of Mars, is he went from being an Earthling to being a Martian. The planets are very different sizes and very different gravities, and that's how he got all of his power. He got his power because he was used to Earth gravity
forever. Yep.
That's why he was able to do these huge jumps and do these incredible feats of strength by lifting things up. And that's what he was. For me, as a teenager reading that, he was a hero I could be, because I was an average kid. I could go to Mars and be this superhero. So to me, it made it that much more fun to read him.
And if I remember correctly, in the first book, he was a wounded Union or Confederate soldier who had, I can't remember if he was Union or Confederate, but he was a wounded Civil War soldier who was not anymore in the peak of fitness because he was just recovering from his wounds and coming out of the hospital or something when he went through the portal.
I don't remember exactly the beginning, because for me, that was never really the important part of the book when I read it. All these years later, I'd love to go back and revisit those if there weren't so dang many books that just, I mean, books just seem to show up on my doorstep every day. Don't know how that happens. It's like I order a book and it shows up. And
I know, right? Well, I mean, the lovely thing about those books is they're so short. They read fast.
Yes. Much like the Tarzan books, I'm sure if I sat down and started to read them, I would just burn through them like I did when I was a kid. I think I made it through the first 5 of that series.
And they're still incredibly readable too.
Yes.
They're one, I mean, 100 years old, antiquated vocabulary, still there's a few authors from that era like H.G. Wells and Charles Dickens who wrote in such a way that they're like permanently readable, and Burroughs is one of those.
Absolutely. All the way through the 20s, there were so many authors that wrote in that same type of vein. H.P. Lovecraft picked up a lot of what he did from what came before him. From
and
these.
Robert E. Howard, same sort of thing.
Exactly. Oh wow, we got to talk Howard one day. I know we do. I've got so many Conan books
we'll have
behind me.
Talk Lovecraft too, especially since the two of them were friends.
Oh yeah. Won't cover Lovecraft at the moment, but so much I could say about Lovecraft right now. But as far as Edgar, the biggest thing for me that I think I find frustrating about Edgar Rice Burroughs is there's not a lot about the man. I don't think I've ever read a biography or an autobiography about him. I don't recall. I mean, obviously he lived, like you said, 100 years ago. It's not like you can go on YouTube and go watch an interview with him and see, right now the YouTubes are covered with Gilbert Gottfried, and it's like, wow, you guys missed all this when it was happening. Gilbert was an amazing comedian.
He was.
And he was an amazing person.
Yep. Rare that you find those two things in the same person.
And that's what was so interesting about him, is he was such a vulgar comic at times, but he was such a personable guy.
Gentle man.
Yes. There's an interview, if you can go catch it. It was Leonard Maltin has his podcast with his daughter, and they interviewed Gilbert Gottfried. Incredible interview.
Wow. I've got to go find that.
I'll send you a link after this, but incredible interview. And that's where you really get the insight of those two talking about old 50s TV shows and the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers, and how the Marx Brothers were so much better than the Three Stooges, but they didn't have the same marketing behind them that the Three Stooges did. So they didn't survive the test of time because people just took those.
But they're still so much funnier.
Yes. But anyway, completely sidetracked, completely different eras. Segues happen. Did you see that segue? It could happen to you. But, and that's what interests me about Edgar Rice Burroughs is, like I said, maybe they exist, maybe they don't. I don't know. I've never gone out and found them. I've never
found one.
I've only read some of his works, and I know that he's got so much other.
Yeah, he's got a series centered around Venus. It's evidently in the same universe as the Barzoom series, but I've never read them. I mean, they're available on the Internet Archive. I need to just go download them and read them, but they're supposed to be really, really good.
Oh, it's Edgar Rice Burroughs, of course, it's going to be.
Yeah, and didn't he also have a Center of the Earth series?
Journey to the Center of the Earth.
No. That was Jules Verne. But
that was Verne.
I thought
The Lost World, wasn't it?
That was Doyle. Arthur Conan Doyle. Yeah, but I think Edgar Rice Burroughs also wrote a Hollow Earth series. It wasn't nearly as long, but at least I think I've heard that he did. I could be mistaken.
Edgar Rice Burroughs, Center of the Earth. At the Earth's core.
There we go.
So yeah, along that same vein. And that was a lot. That's what was going on at that time. 1914, that one came out, like I said, over 100 years ago. It's amazing how readable his, like I said, how readable his work still is so many decades later, and how easily accessible it is. Go on the Internet Archives. So many people are making bad ebook copies and selling them on Amazon. You can go grab them all for free. On Amazon too. Look for the little Amazon Classic where it's got like the green top at the purple bottom and just has the title and the author, and that's, they're all free out there to go grab. I got a lot of them on my phone that I just never got to. But yeah, like you said, he's such a readable author. And he's easy to get confused with so many authors of that era because there's so much similar work that goes on. Wow. What does she say about Edgar? Don't know.
Dude could write.
Yes, he could. As can you and I. Find out more about me at
Indeed,
jrmurdoch.com
and jdsawyer.net.
All right. We are Hat Guys Talk Books. We will talk books next time.
About us. And yeah, we'll see you.
Go like, subscribe, follow, comment. All right, Dan.
See you, Jay.